Swadika, hello and welcome to ASEAN Challenge, the show to give you the latest headlines, highlights and updates happening around your ASEAN community in two languages, Thai and English. I'm Rosalyn Tepawan.
And I'm Alisa สิทธิวงศ์ขอต้อนรับคุณผู้ชมทุกท่านเข้าสู่รายการ ASEAN Challenge ค่ะข่าวสารรอบอาเซียนทั้งภาษาอังกฤษและภาษาไทยค่ะ
And kickstarting our ASEAN Challenge show, heading into ASEAN around us, let's take a look at 2016 and 17 in comparison in terms of the economic outlook. How is ASEAN doing?
That's right. So we can see that several countries, of course, were experiencing a variety of outlooks in terms of economics in the past year. And of course, continuing on in 2017, there is some positive outlooks for several countries. We're going to take a look at some of the specific countries and how they're doing in terms of economics last year or the end of last year and how it's going to be projected in 2017 as well. Beginning off with Indonesia.
Right.
Indonesia, they said, is an economy which last year experienced a mixed bag, they can say there. But however, they are having good outlooks for 2017 in terms of exports and investments. However, investment growth was a little bit slow last year, but hopefully it'll be able to pick up in 2017.
Right. Altogether, Indonesia has gone through some ups and downs last year, and leading up to this year, there have been a lot of influences in terms of the global political realm that affected ASEAN's economic development, but fortunately not by much. So just looking at, before taking a look at Indonesia, looking at ASEAN as a whole, if we compare the growth of GDP, overall GDP, from 2015 to 2016, the growth, there was a slight pickup. From 2015, the GDP growth was 4.5%, but in 2016, it rose slightly, 4.7%. Wow. And so far, good news. In the last quarter three, there was a growth, a slight increase again of 4.8%. So a slight expansion despite the kind of bobbing you see happening in Indonesia's mixed bag. But altogether, not bad.
That's right. But however, there is some shifts in policies which will affect the Indonesian economy as well. Like the government has announced a shift in mining policy on the 12th of January.
Right.
And the government has also eased a 2014 ban on unprocessed ore shipments and changed rules on exports of semi-processed metals as well. So hopefully that's going to be able to pick up the economy and make things brighter in Indonesia.
Right. Definitely Indonesia is one of the biggest economies in ASEAN. Thailand is the second biggest, and well, basically all of ASEAN economies are quite big altogether.
That's right.
But there we go. With Indonesia, lots of changes to be expected, and you could see a lot of shifts as well.
ใช่แล้วค่ะในส่วนแรก ASEAN Around Us เรามาดูในส่วนของเศรษฐกิจรอบอาเซียนกันดีกว่าตั้งแต่ปีที่แล้วมาถึงปีนี้แล้วก็ในอนาคตจะเป็นยังไงกันบ้างนะคะถ้าเราดูในส่วนของอาเซียนเนี่ยเราก็เห็นได้ว่ามันก็มีการเปลี่ยนแปลงเยอะพอสมควรแล้วก็หวังว่าเศรษฐกิจในอาเซียนเนี่ยจะดีขึ้นใน 2017 ด้วยถ้าเราดูอย่างรายละเอียดนะคะในอินโดนีเซียค่ะทางเศรษฐกิจของอินโดนีเซียเนี่ยก็มีการขยายตัวนะในปีที่แล้ว 2559 แต่ตัวเลขในไตรมาสล่าสุดคือไตรมาสสุดท้ายของปี 59 เนี่ยอาจจะมีการผิดหวังเล็กน้อยแต่ว่าหวังว่าปีนี้ 2017 เนี่ยจะดีขึ้น
ถ้าดูภาพรวมๆนะคะก็นับว่าการเติบโตของ GDP ก็ใช้ได้เลยทีเดียวนะคะเพราะว่าตั้งแต่ปี 2015 เนี่ย GDP รวมก็ 4.5% แต่ว่าปัจจุบันนี้นะคะควอเตอร์ที่ 3 เนี่ยไตรมาสที่ 3 ก็นับว่าเพิ่มขึ้นอีกหลายเปอร์เซ็นต์ 4.8% แล้วสำหรับอินโดนีเซียเขาก็คาดว่าจะเพิ่มขึ้นภายใน 2018 เนี่ยนะคะก็ 5.4% เลยนะคะ
Alright, so let's take a look at a different country still in the ASEAN bloc, of course, in Vietnam. Vietnam has experienced what we can say some good news for the country, and if you are an expat, you might want to consider moving to Vietnam as well.
Is that right?
According to HSBC, which is the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bankers Corporation, or HSBC, they came out with a survey, and the survey is called the Expat Explorer Survey. They said that according to the ASEAN bloc, of course, Singapore is considered as number one in the world actually, but Vietnam has risen from the 24th place in the world up to 19 this year.
Wow, congratulations to Vietnam. Well, it is very, you could say, compared to many ASEAN countries, Vietnam is a very appealing place for foreign investment because of their tax policies and foreign investment policies. Pretty flexible compared to many ASEAN countries. So you can imagine more expats and more investments rolling into Vietnam, especially the country proving itself to be quite resilient because throughout, off and on, they've had trouble with their drought situation. And so that has moderately affected their economic development. But now, in the latest developments, Vietnam is gradually recovering from their drought situation. So that means a steady increase in production in the agricultural sector. So there you go, resilience.
So let's take a look at the overall rankings all over the world. Of course, number one, as mentioned, is Singapore, and that is number one. Coming down on second place was New Zealand, Canada, the Czech Republic, and Switzerland. So those are your top 5 places where expats want to go. But if we take a look at the ASEAN bloc alone, of course, we have Singapore as mentioned, number 1. Number 2 is Vietnam at 19th place this year. And then after that is our country, Thailand.
Wow, there you go. Some good news for Thailand as well. With Singapore leading the pack as we expected, there has been some extra developments in Singapore in terms of their electronics market. According to various research, a lot more activity going on as well in their expanding and improving electronics industry, casting Singapore more into the lead compared to the rest of ASEAN as well. So some good news.
ก็มาดูกันในส่วนของประเทศเวียดนามกันบ้างทางประเทศเวียดนามเนี่ยค่ะก็ถือว่าเป็นข่าวดีจากที่มีการผลสำรวจ Expat Explorer Survey นะคะก็คือเป็นการผลสำรวจว่าชาวต่างชาติอยากจะไปทำงานในประเทศไหนซึ่งเวียดนามเนี่ยค่ะก็ถือว่าเป็นประเทศที่ขึ้นอันดับจากตอนแรกในปีที่แล้วอยู่ที่อันดับที่24ค่ะในปีนี้ก็ขึ้นมาเป็นอันดับที่19ณตอนนี้ทั่วโลกสิงคโปร์ได้อันดับ1อันดับที่2 3 4ถึง5ก็คือนิวซีแลนด์แคนาดาเช็กรีพับลิกแล้วก็สวิตเซอร์แลนด์ค่ะแต่ว่าถ้าพูดถึงในตัวอาเซียนเองเนี่ยสิงคโปร์มาอันดับ1อันดับ2ก็คือเวียดนามซึ่งอยู่อันดับที่19ของโลกแต่ว่าอันดับที่3ก็คือประเทศไทยของเรานั่นเอง
ถ้าพูดถึงประเทศสิงคโปร์นะคะก็คือเรามาดูอัตราการจ้างพนักงานสิงคโปร์เพราะว่าหลายคนจะเดินทางไปทำงานที่สิงคโปร์กันมากขึ้นเพราะว่าเศรษฐกิจเขาเป็นอันดับท็อปของประเทศใช่ไหมคะเพราะฉะนั้นในเซอร์เวย์ล่าสุดทาง Trade Economics ก็บอกว่าเปอร์เซ็นต์ของพนักงานที่สิงคโปร์ที่จะตกงานกันก็จะเพิ่มขึ้นเรื่อยๆนะคะจาก 2.2% นะคะจากไตรมาสที่3ปีที่แล้วเนี่ยก็จะมีการเพิ่มขึ้นอีกเป็น 2.6% ภายในปี 2020 นั่นเองก็นับว่าเป็นข่าวที่คนอยากจะเดินทางไปสิงคโปร์อาจจะต้องระมัดระวังนิดนึงนะคะ
That's right. So taking a look at that, of course, Singapore's unemployment rate, it's expected to be 2.20% by the end of this year. They are trying to find out measures on how to reduce the unemployment rate in the long term, of course. It's very important for them to develop their manpower and skills. That's an important way in order to reduce the unemployment rate in order to make these people capable for the markets.
Right, so another practice that is being practiced among ASEAN countries is sustainability. And Singapore perhaps is also trying to develop that not only in, say, the electronics industry, the automotive industry, but of course now the important personnel industry and unemployment rate as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on those details as they develop throughout ASEAN.
That's right. So that's an outlook on the economics in the ASEAN bloc, specifically 3 countries and a little bit more. That was going on in 2016, and hopefully we'll see some good news in 2017 as well.
Right, indeed. So we'll be looking forward to 2017 and onward. But at the same time, with so many changes happening, various analysts and economists are projecting that a lot of the global politics will have more and more impact on the ASEAN economy as well. So be keeping watch on that situation too.
That's right. But for now, let's take a short break and we'll be back for more news updates coming up soon.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to the program, Into ASEAN Challenge. Let's take a look at what's going on around the ASEAN Bloc Plus Plus in our ASEAN Hot Topics session, starting off with what's going on once again in Indonesia, with a lot of global politics having more impact on ASEAN, especially this year with a change in leadership in the US. There have been a domino effect happening in Indonesia, with the latest news revolving around Indonesian students rethinking their opportunities of taking their studies abroad, specifically to the US, with a recent travel ban on certain Muslim majority countries.
That's right. So Indonesia itself has not been on the list of the 7 countries, but however, due to the fact that it is a travel ban to Muslim majority countries, Indonesia being a country with a large population of Muslim citizens, these students are quite concerned themselves that it's going to have an effect when they go to the United States. Normally, a lot of people, thousands of Indonesians will take the TOEFL test, which is the test of English as a foreign language, and hopes to get into American universities. But however, as you mentioned, the travel ban by US President Donald Trump has come out. It has made prospective Indonesian students coming from what we can say a very large Muslim populated country having second thoughts at the moment now. They're considering that maybe other countries could be better options.
Right, indeed. And so at the moment, perhaps this is a norm now. Many Muslims and from predominantly Muslim majority countries are feeling less welcome in America with the latest temporary travel ban implemented on January 28th. And according to Trump, he said that this is a needed measure in order to protect United States against Islamist militants. But at the same time, this situation is backfiring among students, and the opportunities to expand education in the U.S. and opportunities for students abroad as well who are feeling a lot of that uncertainty affecting their travel plans.
So this, of course, has already taken effect in the amount of students taking the TOEFL exam in Indonesia and the amount of people studying for it. So according to counseling centers in Jakarta, the uncertainty is affecting the amount of students who are going there. Some students have been accepted to universities. For example, there was a student who was, his name is Bakhtiar, and he's 24. He was going to pursue his master's degree in banking and financial law in the United States. But however, he is reconsidering that at the moment.
Right. This measure had caused a lot of commotion, a lot of confusion as well for people who have already obtained their education visas, school visas, and travel visas, whether or not those still apply and are still working and allow them to enter. But because of that confusion, that led to another domino effect.
That's right.
Just the lack of welcome.
That's right.
So we'll keep you posted.
มาดูกันในข่าวแรกนะคะในอาเซียนฮอตอิชชูค่ะมาดูกันที่อินโดนีเซียคราวนี้แต่ว่ามันไม่เชิงเกี่ยวกับอินโดนีเซียอย่างเดียวการที่มีประธานาธิบดีคนใหม่โดนัลด์ทรัมป์ของสหรัฐอเมริกาเนี่ยค่ะก็มีผลกระทบต่อชาวอินโดนีเซียเช่นเดียวกันค่ะซึ่งในแต่ละปีเนี่ยคือสหรัฐเนี่ยถือว่าเป็นประเทศหนึ่งที่คนอินโดนีเซียนิยมที่จะไปเพื่อไปศึกษาต่อไม่ว่าจะเป็นปริญญาตรีหรือว่าปริญญาโทแต่คราวนี้พอหลังจากที่โดนัลด์ทรัมป์ได้ออกมาด้วยกฎหมายต่อต้านชาวมุสลิมของโดนัลด์ทรัมป์เนี่ยค่ะภายใน7ประเทศเนี่ยก็ทำให้ชาวมุสลิมในอินโดนีเซียเนี่ยเริ่มคิดอีกรอบหนึ่งแล้วว่าควรจะไปดีไหม
ค่ะก็ทางอเมริกาสหรัฐอเมริกากลายเป็นประเทศที่หลายคนคิดว่าจะไม่ต้อนรับชาวมุสลิมมากขึ้นเรื่อยๆถึงแม้ว่าจะเป็นการแบนแบบชั่วคราวซึ่งเริ่มต้นวันที่28นั่นเองนะคะเดือนที่แล้วแต่ว่ามันทำให้คนที่อยากจะไปเรียนต่อที่ประเทศสหรัฐอเมริกาเนี่ยรู้สึกว่ามันอันตรายมากขึ้นแล้วความปลอดภัยอาจจะไม่เหมือนเดิมเพราะฉะนั้นหลายคนก็ต้องคิดอีกรอบนึงว่าจะไปหรือไม่ไปแล้วหาโอกาสอื่นดีหรือไม่
That's right. So of course this is having more effects than we had probably initially thought of, domino effects as you had mentioned in other countries like Indonesia here.
Indeed. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see what other domino effects happen because not only is it in terms of threat and security, but this has escalated into the issue of education as well.
All right, so let's move on to Myanmar now, and in terms of the Rohingya group themselves. Now, at the moment now, the UN has revealed that there has been reports that the Myanmar army have committed killings, gang rapes, and burnt down the villages of the Rohingya Muslims in the Rakhine state. And this was occurring since October of last year, and Rohingya Muslims have been forced to leave the country and are going to Bangladesh at the moment.
Right, and this has continued ongoing for the past several months now without any kind of conclusion as of yet, where there have been a lot of jockeying of different investigative results and with officials joining in and finger pointing each other. But so far, an arbitrator has stepped in a way, a mediator, the UN coming in to investigate more closely the situation. While there had been lots of complaints in the past few months, they hadn't seemed to be taken to heart by authorities. Perhaps now we have some more developments here, according to the UN reports, saying these crimes did happen and the Rohingya ethnic cleansing is ongoing.
So the UN had come up with this report from a vast majority of witnesses, 204 to be exact, and they interviewed these witnesses who had testified to the killings of babies, toddlers and children, women and the elderly, and opening fire at people, fleeing, burning the entire villages, mass detention, and rapes and sexual violence is going on as well. One woman even told the UN investigator how her 8-month baby boy had his throat slit.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Then another was raped by soldiers and saw her 5-year-old daughter killed as she tried to stop him as well.
That is tragic news coming from Myanmar's Rakhine state and seems to be ongoing despite these investigations happening by third parties here. And some more updates considering the total number of people so far who have fled these tragic events. 69,000 have fled from the Muslim majority northern part of Rakhine into Bangladesh, where at the same time their future and their fate in Bangladesh is also uncertain as well, as the country has policies implemented that ban receiving refugees from Myanmar.
That's right. But if we take a look at Myanmar's side, the Myanmar side has been denying almost all of the allegations against human rights abuses in the northern Rakhine states, and officials have even accused the Rohingya residents and refugees of fabricating these stories of killings and beatings and mass rape as well. So they're saying that it was in collaboration with insurgents who they say are Rohingya terrorists with links to Islamists overseas.
Right, so the battle continues in Myanmar between the ethnic minority groups, with the government turning a blind eye to the situation in the Rohingya community as well. So we'll keep you posted on developments as the situation continues to snowball.
That's right. มาดูกันในส่วนข่าวที่2ค่ะมากันที่ประเทศเมียนมากันบ้างค่ะซึ่งอย่างที่เราทราบกันมันก็มีประเด็นเรื่องโรฮิงญาเกิดขึ้นอยู่ในรัฐยะไข่นั่นเองคราวนี้ทางสหรัฐประชาชาตินะคะหรือว่า UN เนี่ยค่ะก็ได้ออกมากับรายงานอันหนึ่งซึ่งระบุว่ากองกำลังความมั่นคงของเมียนมาเนี่ยค่ะก็ได้ทำความมีการทำความรุนแรงมีการข่มขืนแล้วก็เผาบ้านของโรฮิงญาแล้วก็ทำให้หลายคนก็ต้องออกไปจากประเทศแล้วก็ไปที่บังกลาเทศนั่นเอง
ค่ะเหตุการณ์แบบนี้ก็มีการชี้แจงมาหลายเดือนแล้วนะคะว่ามีเหตุการณ์แบบนี้เกิดขึ้นแต่ว่าจากนั้นก็ไม่มีการคืบหน้าจากการกระบวนการสืบสวนแต่ว่าตอนนี้ก็มีเขาเรียกว่ามุมคนที่3กลุ่มที่3เข้ามาช่วยเหลือแล้วก็มาสอบสวนเพื่อที่จะสรุปเคสได้ว่าเหตุการณ์แบบนี้เกิดขึ้นจริงหรือเปล่าแล้วทางรัฐบาลสามารถทำอะไรได้บ้าง
That's right. So we're going to have to keep you posted, of course, on how these reports go and how, of course, Myanmar and the UN is going to handle with this issue. Now, moving on to news updates still about Rohingyas. These Muslims who are in Bangladesh, they do hope to return to Myanmar. So they are fleeing the Rakhine state, but they do want to go back to their homes, of course. So at the moment, Rohingya Muslims are temporarily asking for the international community to help them go back to Myanmar.
Right. So far, they're trying to establish a temporary setting, as we mentioned, in Bangladesh, where most of them have fled, 69,000 so far. And as a result, what you see here is a temporary settling of unregistered refugee camps in Bangladesh. And they're asking third parties like the UN and the international community to step in to help them in order to find some new opportunities or return home, as you mentioned. Of course, they consider Rakhine State their home. And so in order to combat the situation there, there's a lot of work to be done. But altogether, they do still hope to be home, to return home.
That's right. So you mentioned that the 69,000 people there who just fled to this temporary makeshift refugee site in Bangladesh. They're actually joining another 200,000 something more Rohingyas in Bangladesh already. So there's a big a wave of people going into Bangladesh, fleeing the violence going on in Rakhine State, as we mentioned in the previous news. And the UN, of course, has come in to help and as well as to investigate all of these allegations in which have been reported of killings, gang rape, burning villages in the northern Rakhine area.
Right, indeed. And they're asking for help so far from local NGOs and also international NGOs such as this, the NGO Action Against Hunger. But this group, this community, this ethnic minority group have faced discrimination in Myanmar for generations. They are not considered distinct groups under the citizenship laws. They're actually considered stateless people and have very limited access to education, healthcare, and what a normal citizen should have access to. And so they have been violated their human rights for generations, and so their plight continues.
That's right. มาดูกันในส่วนข่าวที่3ค่ะก็ต่อเนื่องจากข่าวที่แล้วที่เกี่ยวข้องกับชาวโรฮิงญานั่นเองถึงแม้ว่าชาวโรฮิงญาเนี่ยค่ะก็ได้ลี้ภัยไปที่ประเทศบังกลาเทศเนี่ยค่ะทางชาวโรฮิงญาเนี่ยก็อยากจะกลับบ้านเพราะว่าถือว่ารัฐยะไข่ก็ถือว่าเป็นบ้านของเขาตอนนี้นะคะทางชาวโรฮิงญาก็ได้เรียกร้องให้ประชาคมโลกเนี่ยช่วยเหลือเขาให้เขาสามารถกลับบ้านได้
Right ก็มีข่าวดีด้วยนะคะก็นับว่าเป็นการคืบหน้าทีเดียวนะคะจากหัวหน้าประเทศอังซังซูจีนะคะบอกว่าวันศุกร์ที่แล้วเนี่ยจะเริ่มการกระบวนการช่วยเหลือแล้วก็สอบสวนมากขึ้นเพื่อที่จะได้ข้อสรุปจากเหตุการณ์นี้
All right, so moving on to other news updates now. Into the Philippines, in which the Philippines, the Defense Ministry in specific says that it will still uphold ceasefire with Maoists despite rebel pullout. So the spokesperson of the Philippine Defense Ministry has said that the government will maintain its unilateral ceasefire with Maoist guerrillas despite a rebel announcement to resume combat operation next week.
Well, this is good news indeed because the South and the Maoist rebels have been causing conflict in a way with authorities for quite some time, and so there had been off and on ceasefires, but now people can relax because another ceasefire has occurred, a unilateral ceasefire with Maoist rebels, despite the recent guerrilla announcement to resume combat after 10 days. It's a breathing period, you could say, but the Communist Party of the Philippines, along with its military called from the New People's Army, they announced earlier that the termination of the ceasefire declared 5 months ago and the resumption of a protracted guerrilla war that killed thousands of people is ongoing.
That's right. So the New People's Army said in a statement that the ceasefire agreed to last August will expire on the 10th of February, but added the rebels will still support peace talks with the government of President Rodrigo Duterte. The Public Affairs Officer has also said that the government soldiers will not actively pursue communist rebels, but warn the military to still apprehend lawless elements and will not recognize so-called guerrilla zone claimed by Maoists.
So far, this ceasefire comes at a very opportune time because over the past few months, from September to November last year in particular, the military reported 0 armed encounters with communist guerrillas, but it did still observe an increase in rebel attacks in the last 2 months alone. And so from that grace period, you see more and more attacks at a very, you could say, huge rate, an increasing rate, with 9 incidents showing rebel violations of a truce. So we'll have to see whether the ceasefire will be upheld by both sides for the next few days.
That's right. So that's news updates for this week here on the ASEAN Hot Issue.
Right. It's time for a short break, though. When we come back, more coming up in ASEAN calendar, so don't go away.
พักกันสักครู่ค่ะ
Welcome back to the program. Into ASEAN Challenge, we head over to what's going on in the ASEAN calendar up ahead.
ค่ะกลับเข้าสู่รายการ ASEAN Challenge ค่ะซึ่งในช่วงนี้เราไปดูกันว่ามีอีเวนต์อะไรกำลังเกิดขึ้นในอาเซียนกันบ้างค่ะ
Let's check it out.
The 11th of February 2017, Maka Busha Day. a day to repent your sins in Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. Ma Kha Busha is an important religious festival observed by Buddhists in Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. It is celebrated on the full moon day of the third lunar month, which usually falls in late February or early March. Ma Kha Busha is a public holiday and an occasion where followers of Buddhism are reminded of Buddha and his teachings. Many will go to a temple and perform merit-making activities on this day. The spiritual aims of the day are not to commit any kinds of sin and to purify one's mind. Full moon days are a revered occasion in Buddhism and considered a holy day. On these days, people will make merit at their local temples. A good Buddhist will adhere to the precepts laid upon by Buddha, much like how followers of Christianity obey the 10 Commandments. Some of these precepts include avoiding consumption of alcohol, killing, stealing, lying, and cheating. Some of the less severe precepts are broken regularly by many, such as alcohol consumption, and Ma Kha Busha is a chance for people to seek forgiveness. The festival also reinforces the idea of pure and sacred path to enlightenment. Ma Kha Busha commemorates the ordainment of Buddha's first 1,250 disciples, who spontaneously came to see him and to listen to his sermon that day, 2,500 years ago. It is also said that on this day, more than 2,550 years ago, Buddha announced his passing away, which would happen 3 months later. He correctly predicted his death and is now remembered as Visakha Busha Day, which also happens to be his birthday and Enlightenment Day. In the evening, most temples in Cambodia host a candle procession called Vien Tien. Vien meaning circle and Tien meaning candle. With a candle, incense sticks, and lotus flower in hand, people walk around the temple 3 times, once each to venerate Buddha, the Dharma or Buddhist teachings, and the Sangha, monistic life. Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand hold strong Theravada Buddhist traditions, making this holiday a very important one in each country's calendars. If you have any questions or are going to visit one of these countries during this day, you may contact us if you would like to tweak your itinerary with a temple visit and fully experience the festival. Discover the beautiful culture and heritage of these 3 countries with Exhaustimo's Colorful Capitals Tour. Discover some of Southeast Asia's most colorful cities with a tour to its historical sites and rarely seen locations. You can also see the suggested multi-country tours for other memorable trips into this beautiful and captivating region. The 12th of February 2017, Myanmar Union Day. The Union of Myanmar, also known as Burma, has declared February 12th a national holiday. Union Day commemorates the day in 1947 that Bokyok Aung San, a Burmese nationalist leader, helped to unify all of Burma. When Britain annexed Burma in 1886, the country was not unified. Central Burma was inhabited by Burmese people, while the outlying areas were inhabited by ethnic minorities. The British continued to govern Burma into the 20th century. In the 1930s, Aung San led student protests, causing the British government to imprison him. He fled to Japan in 1940, returning in 1941 with the invading Japanese as head of the Burma Independence Army, or BIA. He later served as Minister of Defense in the puppet government headed by Ba Maw. Aung San became disillusioned with the Japanese and handed the BIA over to the Allies in 1945. Aung San helped establish the Anti-Fascist People's Freedom League, or AFPFL, the Burmese political organization that led the struggle for Burma's independence from Great Britain. He emerged after the World War II as de facto Prime Minister of British Burma and negotiated the agreement that won Burma its independence on February 12, 1947. Aung San and leaders from national groups across the country signed the Panglong Agreement. That action unified Burma and demanded that the British government restore independence to all of Burma. But Aung San did not live to see it. He was assassinated on July 19, 1947, before the country officially became independent on January 4, 1948. 5 days before Union Day, an annual relay of the Union flag begins. A ceremony to mark the start of the relay is held at the City Hall. The flag is carried through 45 townships before arriving at the People's Square for a Union Day ceremony. 14th of February 2017, Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day, also called Saint Valentine's Day or the Feast of Saint Valentine, is an annual holiday celebrated on February 14th. It originated as a Western Christian feast day honoring one or more early saints named Valentinus, and is recognized as a significant cultural and commercial celebration in many regions around the world, although it is not a public holiday in any country. Several martyrdom stories associated with the various Valentines that were connected to February 14th were added to later martyrologies, including a popular hagiographical account of Saint Valentine of Rome, which indicated he was imprisoned for performing weddings for soldiers who were forbidden to marry and for ministering to Christians who were persecuted under the Roman Empire. According to legend, during his imprisonment, Saint Valentine healed the daughter of his jailer, Asterius, and before his execution, he wrote her a letter signed, "Your Valentine," as a farewell. The day first became associated with romantic love within the circle of Geoffrey Chaucer in the 14th century, when the tradition of courtly love flourished. In the 18th century England, it evolved into an occasion which lovers expressed their love for each other by presenting flowers, offering confectionery, and sending greeting cards, known as Valentines. In Europe, St. Valentine's keys are given to lovers as a romantic symbol and an invitation to unlock the giver's heart, as well as to children in order to ward off epilepsy, called St. Valentine's malady. Valentine's Day symbols that are used today include the heart-shaped outline, doves, and the figure of the winged Cupid. Since the 19th century, handwritten valentines have given way to mass-produced greeting cards.
Those were our highlights in our ASEAN calendar these couple of weeks. With that, we take a short break. Coming back, ASEAN interview ahead. Stay tuned.
พักกันสักครู่ค่ะ
Back into ASEAN Challenge, we take a look into our ASEAN interview section. What's going on with the drug war in the Philippines?
ค่ะกลับเข้าสู่รายการ ASEAN Challenge ในช่วงนี้ ASEAN Interview กันเรามีประเด็นสำคัญไปให้คุณผู้ชมค่ะ
Let's go take a look.
Alam mo noon yung may barter trade, when there was this barter trade, there were BOC built.
Philippine National Police Chief Ronald De La Rosa says officers can still apprehend drug addicts outside of formal operations, despite President Rodrigo Duterte's order to stop his anti-narcotics campaign. President Rodrigo Duterte suspended his war on drugs on January 31st after a scandal engulfed the police force regarding the abduction and murder of a South Korean businessman by rogue officers inside their national headquarters in Manila. De La Rosa said Duterte's order only barred the police from applying and executing search warrants and conducting drug raids, which human rights groups say mostly take place in the country's slums and poorest communities.
Ang problema daw ngayon, tumapag na naman yung mga puser, sabi, wala nang pulis manghuli sa amin, libre na naman kami magbibinta ng shabu ngayon sa kalsada. So, ganito ang guidance ko sa ating kapulisan. Pag meron kayo nakita, catch nyo red-handed na nagbibinta ng shabu, hulihin ninyo. That is not part of the police-initiated anti-drug operations. Reactive yan eh. Hindi yan police-initiated. Reactive operations yan. Nakita ninyo eh. Kailangan police ka. You are duty-bound to arrest anybody committing crime in your presence. Meron nga tayong civilian arrest. Civilian nga pwede manghuli. Ikaw pa na police ka.
More than 7,600 people have been killed since Duterte launched his anti-drugs campaign 7 months ago. More than 2,500 in what police say were shootouts during raids and sting operations. Almost 4,000 deaths involved unknown gunmen, which various groups linked to the police and Duterte himself. Amnesty International released a report on February 2nd claiming that police officers hire vigilantes to gun down suspected drug addicts and pushers, while kills in drug raids are incentivized. The Philippine Catholic Church assailed the police for the deaths and war on drugs for creating a reign of terror among the poor in sermons read out at services around the country Sunday the 5th. Reacting to the church's most vocal statement yet, De La Rosa said the police are not perfect, just like the church.
Anong gusto na? Pabayaan na lang namin ang problema sa drugs? Ganun ang gusto nila? You know, please tell them, I can communicate God without passing through them. Yung mga pari at mga bishops na yan, I believe in God. Katoliko ako. But pag sinasabi natin na merong yung PNP hindi perfect, merong mga sindikatong pulis, bakit masabi mo ba yung church, yung mga pare mismo, they are perfect, wala silang ginagawang kalukuhan?
Since suspending police operations in the campaign, Duterte has relegated his drug war to a smaller anti-drug agency under the Justice Ministry. Duterte is expected to sign an executive order for the military to provide support and has repeatedly threatened to declare martial law. Philippine Catholic churches slammed President Rodrigo Duterte's anti-drug campaign in coordinated Sunday service homilies around the country. Priests under the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines read a pastoral letter from their leadership criticizing the thousands of suspected drug addicts and pushers killed under the bloody crackdown on narcotics. In its most strongly worded attack on the crackdown on drug pushers and users, the CBCP priest said killing people was not the answer to trafficking of illegal drugs, and it was disturbing that many didn't care about the bloodshed or even approved of it.
An additional cause of concern is the reign of terror in many places of the poor. Many are killed not because of drugs. Those who kill them are not brought to account. An even greater cause of concern is the indifference of many to this kind of wrong. This is considered as normal and even worse, something that according to them needs to be done.
The priest Joselito Sarabia said in a reading of the pastoral letter that an additional cause of concern is the reign of terror in many places of the poor. Many are killed not because of drugs. Those who kill them are not brought into account. And even greater cause of concern is the indifference of many to this kind of wrong. He said it's considered as a normal and even worse, something as a norm, that something needs to be done.
Dapat ding unahin ang pagtatama at pagtatanggal sa mga tiwaling pulis at korupsyon sa mga hukuman. Ang napakabagal na pagsulong ng mga kaso sa hukuman ay isang malaking dahilan ng paglaganap ng kriminalidad at kawawang kalagayan ng mga nasa kulungan. Kadalasan, ang mga mahihirap ang nagdurusa sa ganitong sistema. Nananawagan din kami sa mga nahalal na mga politiko na paglingkuran ang pangkalatang kabutihan ng bayan at hindi ang sariling interes.
Their address did not mention Duterte by name, but urged the accountability from the government and police, who have been accused by human rights groups of extrajudicial killings in the anti-drug campaign. More than 7,600 people have been killed since Duterte launched his campaign 7 months ago. Both the government and police have strenuously denied that such killings have taken place. Responding to the pastoral letter, presidential spokesperson Ernie Abella said the church is out of touch, the public's perception towards the anti-drug campaign. But businessman Lubertus Lontok thought otherwise.
Kailangan kasi bigyan ng chance, okay? Kasi yung drug addict, biktima yan eh. Yung user, biktima lang yan ng drugs. So, pwede naman natin i-rehab yung mga biktima ng drug abuse. Ngayon, yung mga pusher at saka yung mga drug lord, yun ang dapat natin ikondena. Okay?
Priest Carlos Ronquillo said the CBCP's message was meant to remind the nearly 80 million Catholic Filipinos that their values require them to sympathize with the families of the drug war victims.
I think the bishops would like, to refer us back to fundamental value. Your Christianity involves you to reality. Your Christianity is not to be a simple me and my God.
Nearly 8 in 10 Filipinos are Catholics, and unlike in many other countries where the faith has waned, the majority still practice with enthusiasm. While that support has historically given the church significant political and social clout, hesitant to criticize the blunt-spoken president's war on drugs. In interviews with Reuters last year, more than a dozen clergymen said they were uncertain how to take a stand against the killings, given the popular support for Duterte's campaign. Some said challenging him could be fraught with danger. Duterte has routinely attacked the church. He cursed the Pope for causing traffic snarl-ups during his 2015 visit, and as recently as this week called for a showdown with priests whom he has accused of having wives, engaging in homosexual acts, misusing state funds, and molesting children.
And that wraps up the ASEAN Challenge for this week. As for now, thanks for joining. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ